baggage, crone, weird sister. The kinds of words that were thrown at old women in days past. And this is a story about words. Now, when we are asked to tell stories about justice or gratitude or kindness, we often fall back to tell stories about injustice, ingratitude, and unkindness. And that is the case with this story. This story that is well known in both the Jewish traditions and the Muslim traditions, and I have taken and placed it in a part of the world that I know very well. At Allington Castle near Maidstone in Kent, all was busyness. The place was being decorated for Christmas, yes. Christmas was important. Christmas was an important religious feast. But the main event in England in the medieval period was Twelfth Night, the night before the Feast of Epiphany. And on Twelfth Night, there would traditionally be a great feast. And in Allington Castle, the tradition for generations was to invite the villagers into the great hall and there to be a great feast with roasted meats and almond biscuits and stuffed quince and, of course, the Twelfth Night cake. And if you found the bean in the Twelfth Night cake, then you would become king or queen of the feast, which gives you an idea of how upside down Twelfth Night could be. Sir Henry de Cobham did not like Twelfth Night. He was the Lord of Allington Castle, and it was his responsibility to give the feast, a feast where the poor people would come into his castle, into the great hall, with their dirty clothes, their unwashed bodies, and they would drink. Oh, how they would drink. There would be food for them. Roast meat, stuffed quince, almond biscuits, and of course the Twelfth Night cake, food that they would never eat at any other time of the year. But did they show gratitude? Oh no. They took advantage of the traditions that Twelfth Night saw everything in the world turned upside down. Oh, Sir Henry de Cobham hated Twelfth Night. But then he had an idea. There was that old woman, the baggage, the crone, the weird sister who lived on the edge of the village. Now, the people feared her. So if she had a place at the feast, if she had a high place at the feast, visible to everyone else, then people might show a bit more respect. People might be worried that she would see them and judge them. I mean, after all, they were frightened of her, but when someone was sick, it was her they went to. When a woman was about to give birth, the family went to her to fetch her, to bring her to the home. When there was a dispute in the village, they went to her. She was the wise woman, no matter what they called her behind her back. The old woman sat in her hovel on the edge of the village, trying to keep warm by the small fire in the middle of the building. I say building because it was just one room. And of course it had no chimney, so it was thick with smoke. Suddenly the door was pushed open. No knock, you notice. And the old woman was surprised to see a page from the castle. And in his arms he was carrying a bundle. He looked down at the old woman sitting on the ground by her fire, and he said to her, "Old woman, Sir Henry de Cobham desires your presence at the Twelfth Night feast." "Oh, really?" said the old woman, as one of her eyebrows rose, as if it was completely independent of the rest of her face. "Now, why would he want me at the feast?" "I cannot say," said the young man, "but he expects you to be appropriately attired, not in the dirty, smoke-clinging rags that you wear now." And he threw the bundle down on the ground in front of her. The old woman's other eyebrow joined its sister as she said, "I will give Sir Henry my answer to his kind invitation when I have made my choice. But I will give him plenty of time to either set a place for me or to remove a place that has already been set for me. The young man was about to tell her that she should be grateful that her lord and master was inviting her to a feast, but he saw the look in her eyes and decided against it. So he turned on his heel and left without closing the door, obviously. The old woman looked down at the bundle. She untied it, and in it was a blue woolen dress. It could almost be new. In fact, it might have been new. She had not worn anything so clean, so in one piece, so a single garment like this since she was young. And then there was a linen cap to place over her hair. So clean, so white. She had not seen clothes like this for decades. But as she looked at them, she frowned. The next day, Sir Henry de Cobham was in the great hall of Allington Castle, receiving the local clergy for reports on what was going on in the church, so that he could report to the bishop. But as he was talking, a shadow appeared in the door of the great hall. He looked up and he saw an old woman shuffling into the great hall while he was in council with the members of the clergy. He saw her shuffling walk. He saw her grey matted hair. He saw the rags that she was wearing, and he could only imagine the smell that she brought with her. And before she had taken a few steps into the hall, he called out, "Baggage! Crone! Weird sister! No! This is no place for you. I am in council. Come back tomorrow to the 12th night feast. I expect to see you sitting next to me, and I expect to see you properly attired in the clothing I have given you." The old woman said nothing. She just held Sir Henry de Cobham's eyes for a moment and then turned and walked back to the door of the great hall. At the door there was one of Sir Henry de Cobham's servants, and she said, "Please give a message to my lord Sir Henry and tell him that I will attend his feast. I will sit next to him, and I will be appropriately attired." And she went home. The next night was 12th night, a night of great feasting. The tables were groaning with food, with roasted meats, with almond cakes, with stuffed quinces, with the 12th night cake, and of course drink, wassail, cider, seasoned with spices and honey. And the people of the village quaffed their drinks. They dove into the food. They ate and they were merry, but not too merry, because sitting next to my lord Sir Henry de Cobham was the old woman from the village, the wise woman whom they called Baggage, Crone, and Weird Sister, but only when she could not hear them. And so it was more subdued than 12th night feasts had been in the past, as the old woman sat there with her arms folded, staring straight ahead of her. I've told you the foods that were on the table: stuffed quinces, almond cakes, the 12th night cake itself, roasted meats, and wassail. And yet the old woman touched none of this. All this rich food that she would never taste during the year was available and sitting in front of her, and she didn't touch it. She simply sat there with her arms folded. Eventually Sir Henry de Cobham turned to her and said, "Old woman, Will you not eat of the food that I have presented here, that I have offered you as my guest? Will you not drink of the wassail that has been prepared for my guests, and which you sit at the high table as the chief guest? And the old woman looked at him and said, "My lord, I apologize." So she took a cup of wassail in her hand, and rather than using a knife to pick it up with her fingers, she picked up a slice of roasted meat. She took the cup of wassail, held it over her head, and then poured the liquid over the new white linen cap that she was wearing. She took the slice of roast meat, pulled the dress open at the front, and stuffed it down inside. Sir Henry de Cobham gasped at her as she took a stuffed quince and rubbed it into the sleeves of the woolen dress. And then she took almond biscuits and crumbled them down the front of the dress, and a piece of 12th night cake, and rubbed it all over the front, and then stuffed the crumbs down the dress into her cleavage. Sir Henry de Cobham slammed his hands on the table. The room went silent, and everyone stared at the old woman and Sir Henry. The old woman, now with a sodden cap upon her head, with wassail dripping down her face, food rubbed into her clothes on the sleeves and the front, and obviously stuffed down the front of the dress itself. And Sir Henry said, "Is this how you repay my generosity? I invite you here as my guest, and you treat me with this contempt." And the old woman said, "No, Sir Henry. No, you did not invite me as your guest. I came to your great hall yesterday to tell you that I would indeed come to the feast and sit at your side and wear your clothes. But you saw me. You saw the rags I was wearing. You saw my matted grey hair, and you could imagine the smell that I carried with me. And you called me baggage, crone, weird sister, and you sent me away. And yet here I am sitting at your side in this feast. And what has changed? Nothing has changed about me. I am still the person I am. I am still the crone, the baggage, the weird sister. The only difference is I am wearing your clothes. So clearly, my lord, the invitation was not to me. It was to the clothes. You did not want me here as your guest. Your interest was in this beautiful woolen dress and this fine linen cap. They are your guests rather than me, and as they are your guests, I feed them with your food, and I fill them with your drink." And with that, she stood up and walked down the platform where the high table had been positioned, and into the great hall, and through the guests, who were frozen as statues except for their eyes that followed her as she walked out. And there was silence until she reached the door of the great hall, and she turned round and she wriggled and she reached down inside her dress and pulled out a bean from the 12th night cake, and she said, "Why, look, I have found the bean. I am queen of the feast." And she dropped the bean on the floor, she turned and left. And that 12th night feast was one that people would never forget. For the moment the old woman was out of the door and the door closed behind her, oh, people drank more than they had ever drunk before at a 12th night feast. They gorged on the food, and Sir Henry de Cobham would never forget the 12th night feast, where he invited the appearance of the old woman rather than the old woman herself. And that's my story of the wise woman of Allington. And that's how I have told it to you.